There have been 86 Major League Baseball players that have died while their career was still active, dating back to the 1800s. The youngest was just 21 years old, and the oldest was a very young 40 years old. There are Hall of Famers, there are guys who probably would have made the Hall of Fame, there have been journeymen, and there's a few that were just starting out. Since we're all morbidly curious sometimes, I picked out a few of the more interesting stories and more notable names that someone who watches YouTube might remember. This is not going to be a fun video, so if this topic isn't for you, I'll be back with some more baseball stuff real soon. Let's start with Nick Adenhart. He was a pitcher for the Angels. He died on April 9th, 2009. He was just 22 years old, and he was killed in a car crash just hours after pitching 6 shutout innings in Anaheim against the Oakland Athletics. 2 of Adenhart's friends were also killed in the crash. A man who was on probation for felony drunk driving was sentenced to 51 years to life in prison for the accident. Prosecutors said that the driver's blood alcohol level was 3 times higher than the legal limit in California when he ran a light and hit the car that Adenhart and his friends were driving. Some of you may remember Orioles pitcher Steve Beckler, who died on February 17, 2003. He collapsed during a spring training workout in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was later determined by the medical examiner that the diet supplement ephedra contributed to Beckler's death. That supplement was later banned by Major League Baseball and pretty much most sports. The first one that I can remember was in March 1993 when Indians pitchers Steve Olin and Tim Cruz were killed when their powerboat hit a dock during the middle of the night on Little Lake Nellie near Cleveland's spring training camp in Florida. Pitcher Bob Ojeda was also injured in the crash. An investigation later revealed that Tim Cruz was driving the boat and that he was legally intoxicated at the time of the crash. I'm sure some of you remember Thurman Munson. He was the Yankees' captain. He was a catcher, and he died on August 2, 1979, when the plane he was piloting crashed near Ohio's Akron-Canton Airport. He was practicing takeoffs and landings in his private plane. Jose Fernandez is one of those guys who was likely headed to the Hall of Fame. He was one of the best pitchers in baseball. He died on September 25, 2016, at just 24 years old in a boating accident. Fernandez had cocaine and alcohol in his system at the time of the crash. There's no telling what kind of career this guy could have had if he had lived. Oscar Taveras was one of the more exciting young players in baseball. He died at just 22 years old on October 26, 2014. He was killed in a car crash in the Dominican Republic along with his girlfriend. Earlier that month, he had hit a big home run in the playoffs. He was legally intoxicated when he hit a tree. Corey Lytle was killed on October 11, 2006, when his small plane crashed into a Manhattan building just a few days after the Yankees lost in the playoffs. He was 34 years old and he had gotten his pilot's license earlier that year. His flight instructor was also killed in the crash. Darryl Kyle had one of the best curveballs you will ever see. He died on June 22, 2002 in his hotel room in Chicago. He had a blockage of the arteries that supply the heart. He was just 33 years old, and he was found after he wasn't at Wrigley Field before the game. The game was subsequently canceled. Angels outfielder Lyman Bostock was killed on September 23, 1978. He was just 27 years old, and he had gone to visit some relatives in Indiana. He was actually murdered and shot by a shotgun blast that was intended for someone else in the car. Pirates outfielder Roberto Clemente was killed at 38 years old when a plane carrying relief supplies for earthquake victims in Nicaragua crashed on its way from Puerto Rico. He had just gotten his 3,000th hit. It was the final hit of his career, and it was in the last at-bat of the season. He was later voted into the Hall of Fame in 1973 in a special election. Royals pitcher Yordando Ventura was killed on January 22, 2017 in a car crash in the Dominican Republic. He had an outstanding first full season in the major leagues in 2014, and he helped the Kansas City Royals reach the World Series for the first time since 1985. He was just 25 years old. Andy Marte was actually killed on the same day. He was 33 years old and he died in a separate car crash in the Dominican Republic. He played in the majors from 2005 through 2010 with Atlanta and Cleveland, and then finally with Arizona. He actually played his final 2 seasons in South Korea. And at the time of this video, only one player has ever been killed during a major league game. Ray Chapman, the Cleveland shortstop, who died from being hit in the head by a pitch on August 17, 1920. The pitch was thrown by submarine pitcher for the Yankees, Carl Mays, during an afternoon game. Apparently, Chapman didn't even react to the pitch at all, and the sound of the ball striking Chapman's skull was so loud that Mays thought it had hit the end of his bat, and he fielded the ball and threw it to first base. Chapman died 12 hours later from brain damage. And because that was really depressing, here's a picture of a basket full